There's one thing I noticed on the album. You had two EPs beforehand. One EP without, you used, I believe, no songs, and then the other EP you took 4 songs. How come?
So I missed.
I think that it's asking about the like why there's nothing from the second EP. But
Yeah.
All right.
I think part of the reason is because that first EP we recorded very fresh out of writing,
Okay.
and so the songs evolved on the road in the sort of whatever two years between making that record and recording the album, and we felt like we had more to sort of add to that. We hadn't quite like finished. They'd evolved into something different. So I think we wanted to kind of make sure that like we felt like they were in a more sort of crystallized form. We wanted to sort of like put them down as we heard them now rather than as we heard them very, very early on.
What is the time span that the songs that ended up on the album was written in? Because you say Elysium is quite an old song already.
Well, it varies. I mean, I think probably 4 years, maybe. It's probably about a fair estimate as to how long some of these. But let's say 2 of the songs have been around for 4 years, and then the majority of it, I think, has been written in the last 2 years, year or two.
We basically did one song in the last day of recording as well.
Yeah,
didn't we?
yeah. Magdalene was in the last week. We wrote it and recorded it.
Where did the idea come from?
I watched a movie called the Magdalene Sisters, and it was about these things called the Magdalene Laundries, which is a really interesting thing where a lot of Catholic women were put in these sort of kind of like workhouses designed to purify them because they were seen as fallen women, because they would, a lot of, people were considered like a fallen woman if you were a prostitute or something like that. But a lot of these women were actually, hadn't done anything wrong. A lot of them had really horrible histories, and it's a really old sort of news now, I suppose, but it really hit me so hard when I read it, and I was just really interested in it as a subject, and so yeah, that's kind of when it started, I suppose.
And then what made you decide to, because it was, as you say, written at the very last moment, so what made you think it should be on the album?
Well, I think when you're working on an album, you sort of work on all these songs and you kind of don't really know how it's going to work together. But then when you get to about 8 or 9 songs down and you're like, right, it kind of feels like we know what we're dealing with here, you then have sort of a bit more of a knowledge about what the album maybe needs. And so you can kind of put that down to what kind of song are we looking for. And then once we'd established, we kind of felt like it needed another song that was in the sort of similar vein to Isaac or something like that. I played a sort of 4 or 5 ideas, and everyone just sort of went, that's the one, like, let's do that one. And yeah.
And in terms, you mentioned Isaac, is that also a biblical reference?
Yeah, both of those are quite connected, I think, in a weird way. Sort of male and female versions of the same sort of questions, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with what you just mentioned, then would you say the album were the 10 best songs you'd written, or was it the 10 that fitted best together?
I think it's more the 10 that fitted best together, I would say, wouldn't you? It just kind of like, obviously you're thinking quite differently when you're on an album, in an album process, and there's more breadth to what you potentially say, or the different shades that you can put into it. So, as Davie said, you start building it up and then see what else, kind of all these moving parts. I would say that. I don't know if you would agree.
I'd agree, yeah, I think you're right.
I think there's... Yeah, sorry, no.
No.
I think there's some really good songs that were left off the album because they didn't fit in with the overall kind of narrative or like theme of the... So yeah, I don't think it's just a kind of... It's not like these are our best 10 tracks, let's just put them on there. It's something more hopefully coherent than that.
Well, you mentioned a theme, and I know you don't like to explain too much about the songs, but what to you then is the general theme? I know hope is something that is in there.
I'm sorry, what was the last bit?
I know that hope, the feeling of hope is in there, but what to you is kind of the central narrative that runs through the album?
I think once we figured out that the album title was going to come from Stubborn Beast, the song, because it was kind of between Stubborn Beast and Islands as the title for the album, and I remember us all talking about it. And that song seems to have always been, in a weird way, a centerpiece of everything we've done. It's one of the first songs we played live together as well. And yeah, it kind of deals with just being isolated and I don't know, just it's a really difficult one to describe. But yeah, I think all the songs deal with a kind of isolation thing and people who are in quite desperate situations, often self-inflicted desperate situations, and I think a lot of, like, I think in a weird way the album's kind of trying to address that rather than digging yourself further and further into your own hole, maybe look around you kind of thing. But I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard to describe that stuff.
I think the bio, I'm generally not sure if the bio was written or with your consent or anything, but in the bio, the word that was, sorry, the bio that was used was, the word that was used is breaking point. I think that's
yeah.
So what is it that attracts you about this?
I think it's because it's the only time when I really want to write a song is when I've got too much, I can't kind of function. I need to like get it out.
In a cathartic sense?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, and I think it's probably the same for all of us. I mean, everyone kind of writes. Like, it's just, this album is just largely like my lyrics, but we all we talk about lyrics, and there are changes that Joey's sort of gone, maybe you should do that kind of thing. And I mean, Kev writes and Joey writes, and I think all of us, I don't know if I can speak for all of us, but actually Joey writes Christmas songs as well, so that kind of changes the vibe a little bit. But
I tried so hard to get them on the album, the guys knows.
The Christmas EP, you know,
Yeah,
so that's coming up.
That's coming out.
But yeah, just I think you tend to write when you've got something on your mind, you know, and when I'm happy and when everything's great and I'm on a rooftop in Amsterdam hanging out, it's not really those moments that you want to go like, oh God, my life is terrible kind of thing, but then, you know, there's just moments where you feel more alone and you need to get something off your chest that you can't, it's really hard to explain. You can't, the reason why I write songs is essentially I can't explain it to people, and then it's really funny because then I get asked loads of times like, what stuff's about. It's like, well, I write this stuff so that I don't have to do that, but then you have to do it. It's kind of a funny mixture. But yeah.
Delicious irony.
A delicious irony, yeah.
But yeah, you must get it's okay. Let me start with something else. And is it autobiographical?
Yeah, yeah, it is. Not like to a. It is, and it isn't. It's not like it ever isn't. It's just it is, and then there's room for people to. I don't want to. I remember when I was a kid, I never used to do much creative writing. I remember doing like one lesson of it, and I wrote this thing, and the teacher was just like, it was just a little heavy, like, and I was just like, oh, okay. And you can imagine you as a kid. You can't just write really sad stuff. Like, you can't do it. It's just, it has to have like, you have to tell a story. You can't just be miserable. That's like something I learned painfully early in a very embarrassing English lesson.
That's really funny.
But it's like you need to have an element of communicating that with people, and that requires perspective as well. So I think just yeah.
But so then that element of hope that is in the songs, that's kind of, it comes from...
That didn't used to be there. I think
That's just Kev.
that's just Kev, yeah. Kev goes, put the hope in. No, yeah, it's a funny one. Hope I think is an incredibly important part of music, life.
Part of despair.
Part of the greater fabric of depression. No, yeah.
And well, you mentioned the album title. At what point did the album title pop up?
About halfway through making the album?
Yeah.
Yeah, about halfway through making the album, it sort of came into our heads. It's like, yeah.
And why did you think this was the title?
I wrote a really long email about it, didn't I?
Should we get that up?
Yeah, exactly. It's a song that loads of our friends have sort of gone, that's like, a lot of people seem to really connect with that song. Much the same as Pompeii and Elysium, I guess, but I don't know, that one seemed to really get across what we were going for, I suppose. It just had, it's about the most, I don't know, I think it's one of our better ones. I think in terms as a song, just as like, and it doesn't have very much around it. It's just kind of a national guitar and like the vocals and harmonies and a bit of drums and stuff, and piano and electric. So it's actually got everything. But yeah, it's just a song that we've all connected with a lot, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. And finally, about Elysium, you already mentioned that the song kind of changed meaning for you a bit when the video came out.
Yeah.
Has the response to the song also changed when the video came out?
The response, I guess there is. I mean, no one really heard the song before the video came out, have they?
Yeah.
So I guess
we haven't had a chance to play it much live yet either. So it's a bit hard to say almost because Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, just the same thing really. Okay. Just that it's although it had been existing in our sort of minds for a while, in terms of it being out there, no one had really heard it before that video. So.
And who came up with the idea for the video?
It came from our friend Marcus, who's directed the video. He really connected with the lyrics. It reminded him of his brother, and so he emailed us and said, "I'd love to go and shoot my brother, in the last few weeks of his university term." And we loved the idea. We knew Marcus well, and he's got a unique way of viewing the world, and so it seemed like a perfect fit. Obviously, then what happened while he was making the film was, another part to the story. But
were there hesitations then at that point to put it in?
Say that again.
Were there hesitations at that point because of what happened, because of the shooting?
Well, it wasn't really. I mean, we just got like a short email from Marcus explaining what had happened, and we just kind of. Just replied saying, we're so sorry to hear that. Look after each other. I hope everything's all right, and kind of assumed that would be the end of that. And then actually, he got in touch a few days afterwards and said that his brother and his brother's friends that were in the video really wanted to carry on making it. So I guess at that point it stopped really becoming something that we really felt we had much right to sort of get involved with. They really wanted to make it, and they really wanted it to come out, and so we could do, all we could do is honour that. So, I guess, in terms of there being a hesitation, it was only hesitation came from checking that those people were all right in every way, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, no worries. Thanks very much for having us.